Okay. All right, we're now live.
Okay. So.
And yeah, it's gonna wait for a few people to jump on.
Okay.
Hey, Assalamualaikum, Dawood. How are you? Assalamualaikum, everybody. Make sure you drop your salams and share as you come in. Assalamualaikum. Assalamualaikum, Veronique.
Oh.
Waalaikum salam. All right, you guys. So just like before, mashallah, as you come in, please give your salam so we could just take a moment to acknowledge you, especially, I like to acknowledge the timely folks. And please go ahead and share. Assalamu alaikum, Zaraya. I hope I'm saying that right. Assalamu alaikum, Veronique. Assalamu alaikum, Isa. Alhamdulillah. Thank you guys for sharing. Assalamu alaikum, Ziyada. Assalamu alaikum, Bernetta. Assalamu alaikum, Anthony. Alhamdulillah. Okay, mashallah. So we're going to get ready to get started. Welcome to the Dope Muslim Woman podcast. Assalamu alaikum, Saudia. How are you guys doing? I hope you guys are okay. We are ending a series that felt like forever for me, the Divorce and Healing, the Road to Healing series that we launched about 2 weeks ago. I want to welcome all you guys back to our final episode. Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Angela. I'm so glad to be able to connect with you guys. This one is going to be really special because it's going to be about us really connecting with you guys. And, you're going to hear a little bit of some perspectives, but we're also going to be we're going to be engaging with you guys a lot during this episode. So welcome to the Dope Muslim Podcast. This is your girl, Sabria Mills. This is your host, and I am so humbled to be joined once again, mashallah, with our dope co-host, our brother, mashallah. We are talking about the power of the village, and we're going to be giving the male and female perspective on a lot of these topics that we delved into in the past 2 weeks. So we are joined with our brother Khalil Ismail, and I've introduced him many times, but for those that are joining, mashallah, he is an independent recording artist and producer. I don't even know how to describe all the things he does. He's just a creative. MashaAllah, he does so many different things. His music is heard all around the world. SubhanAllah is inspirational music. In addition to that, he does so many things in regards to like delving into the relationships here with men and women. He's been like a resident manager at a domestic violence shelter and just a lot. So you guys have heard him, mashallah. A lot of you guys appreciate his perspective. Welcome back to the show, Brother Khalil. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Wa alaikum salam. All
right. Okay. Alhamdulillah. So we're going to get into this topic, you guys, the power of the village. This is a really important topic because we talked about, like, we had some tough discussions, Khalil, these past 2 weeks. So just about, navigating from divorce, navigating out of narcissistic relationships, toxic relationship, hurt, pain, healing, all of that. And we dealt with it in kind of in an individualistic way. And I know you sort of hinted to this discussion of the importance of the village. That kind of is the key point of getting us through these sort of things, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so alhamdulillah. So we're going to get into this topic, you guys. So just keep in mind, this is how we're going to format it. Khalil and I, we are going to deal with a couple of different questions in regards to this. We're going to tackle it from the male-female perspective. And then we're going to bring you guys in with a live question and answer towards the end of the podcast. We want you guys to be interacting throughout this episode, though. So please continue to share. Please continue to have dialogue around this topic. So let's just get right into it. Like, let's not even waste any time. So, we talked these past 2 weeks, like I said, we talked about our healing. We talked about toxic relationships. We talked about divorce. We talked about really tough topics. And it really has impacted a lot of people. The Village of the Dope Muslim Women podcast has really been impacted. I get so many messages and so much feedback from Muslim men and women that are going through just tough times. But I wanted to just really make sure that we're clear about the different ways that both men and women process these things, right? It's no one size fits all. So just based on your perspective, Brother Khalil, what are some ways that you feel like men process sort of, I would say, divorce, hurt, pain, healing, these sort of topics that we delve with? What are some like overarching ways that men sort of deal with it?
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So, I mean, I guess the first thing I would say is that, is that men are not monolithic, just like women are not monolithic, so meaning, we process it differently. There are some overarching, like you said, there's some parallels where many of us are the same, but, I think it's important to first recognize that there are different types of men, just like there are different types of women, and we process things very differently. So I can kind of speak from my perspective. I always try to let people know that it's just my perspective, and it's not, I don't represent all men, you know what I'm saying? I don't represent all Black people, you know what I'm saying? I can't, because, we think differently. But one of the things that I kind of find just in my surveying of people, because I like to ask questions and I'm constantly a student, is that when it comes to heartbreak and divorce and separation, men have a little bit, I tend to think that men have a bit harder time than women, because we don't tend to delve into the emotional arena very much. And we're not taught, especially as young people, to deal with emotions. We're taught to be tough. We're taught to, not to cry. We're taught, most of the time that we can't, we're going to, from school, even as, even if we have masculine fathers, especially us as Black people, we came up under fathers who had to deal with the type of racism and oppression that's like, we can't afford to have you weak. And their version of that was, you got to be tough, and you can't show emotions, you can't show weakness, you can't show things like that. So these are the things that we came up under, right? And so processing emotions and things like crying is something that, when I look at, for example, the Sahaba, I got older, started reading about the Sirah and the Sahaba, and I noticed that they cried a lot, you know what I'm saying? And they didn't care about that. But for us, like, I think that represents like the suppression that we have. So what happens a lot of times is that we got to divorce a lot of times because we never showed emotion, or the emotion that we should have shown, or we didn't know how to govern emotion. So by the time we get to the point where, now it's time to break, we have a harder time controlling where we are, because we haven't been in the training process of dealing with it the whole time. So we don't know what to do with it a lot. So, sometimes we can kind of act out, you know what I mean? To be honest, we can kind of act out, we act like little kids, when you don't learn how to be an adult, you tend to act like a child. And I will say that for us, it's not even always that, it's not about well-meaning or being bad or being malicious or anything like that. A lot of times we just haven't been trained in it, so nowadays you're starting to see more and more people who teach that you have to, that men can cry, that men should cry, that men should talk. You're starting to see things where you have men who are now having clubs to talk, because talking it out is a release. Women, y'all tend to have a better, where y'all can, hey, child, let me go to the bathroom, and y'all go to the y'all talk it out. Us, we play ball, we box, you know what I'm saying? We wrestle, you know what I'm saying? That's how we get our frustrations out, but those emotions still stay in there. So I'll say, sometimes, and I'll just leave it, I'll let you go to the next thing, because I don't want to be too long-winded, but we're learning, we're learning how to process emotions. And in that process, when break happens and we're not in training, we act out a little bit.
Okay. So, it's good that you made that point, because I was doing a little research before we talked. And it was a report from a psychologist that often deals with divorced couples. And they said men report more feelings of anger and engage in more self-destructive behaviors than women during the divorce process. Women, in comparison, frequently feel more depressed and participate in more social behaviors than men. Women's behaviors could be argued to be more constructive as a result of their tendency to preserve the relationship, whereas men choose destructive strategies for maintaining their own self-esteem. So again, we know that's not across the board, but that tends to be the trend a little bit. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah. As women, we're, and again, this is just my perspective, definitely not speaking for all women, but we're definitely, I think we have a lot more training, as you mentioned, from early on with processing our emotions and, you know, talking things out. And we cultivate, you know, we're pretty radical about cultivating those sort of friendships and relationships where we sort of talk and express. I think a lot of times when we go through this, I think we're a lot more hyper aware of the pain, and then we're able to express it a lot more. And I think, you know, that's sort of, so what I was reading, and which really rings true for me, is that although we as women may feel it more intensely, like the pain initially, we're able to kind of process it a lot more quickly than men. Men may take like years upon years before they actually are like, get over the, you know, really truly get over the woman. Although y'all be truly frightened, but but for women, you know, we're able to process it, you know, but we may go through something a lot more intense initially. So sort of, I think the difference in that regard. Yeah.
I mean, I agree, and I would say that, you know, like I said, because we don't know what to do with it, like we feel emotion throughout. But we're taught, like, for example, even in relationships, like we're taught, like even some of the media tropes and some of the things that I've watched in the media over a period of time, just observe. Remember, the media is training us a lot and teaching us a lot without us knowing us. It trains to the subconscious. And one of the themes that I see is that the good man is the man who shuts up and lets his wife do whatever she wants, you know, and he kind of trails behind like a lapdog, and, you know, just, you know, the happy wife, happy life. And you know, maybe there's some of that has some merit, but if that's the theme, right? Then even the man who is taught to be good, you know what I'm saying? He's not ever able to express his complexity. So like men have complexity just like women have complexity, right? But men, you know, like we're taught and told, even the good people, actually, the more good you are, you're told, hey, just shut up and let her run it, you know? And that's even, you know, they frame that as a good ethic. Right. The problem is that if he's never able to kind of express what he feels and what he wants out of a thing, you know what I'm saying? Then at the time that, and I'm talking about the men who are trying. I'm not talking about, we're not talking about abuse right now. We can talk about abusive stuff. That's another thing, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people who, let's assume they're doing the best that they can. You know what I'm saying? That's we're talking about the people we're giving the benefit of the doubt. So we already dealt with a lot of the abuse stuff. We can go back to there if people ask questions. So I'm talking about the people who are really trying.
Yeah.
To the people who are really trying, like I said, a lot of times you're taught and told just to shut up. And you think it's a good thing because that's what you were told. Right. You know what I'm saying? Just to kind of, and it's, you know, and it should be a balance. Yes, there should be times where I like to say we should have a balance. Like you got to pick your battles as a man, right? Like there are times when, you know, you don't have to, every little thing, you know, that you disagree with, you don't have to say. Like you can, you know, you don't have, but when it's important for you to sit down, especially, and not in a bad time, in a time when y'all are doing good, and express some of the things that you're concerned with. But we're taught that if we have any type of opinion about something, our opinion shouldn't count, right? And so by the time it gets really, really bad, a lot of times it's too late. We're filled up with toxicity and filled up with, you know, you said anger and things like that. You see what I'm saying? When you know, so we have to be one, we got to be trained, and we need mentors and fathers to teach us that we have to emote and express, right? And that's the thing that we are just now coming into in this age where we're like, okay, you know what? It's healthy to express, right? And express, and it's okay to disagree, and it's okay to be disagreed with, right? So so that's what I'd say from our side, from our point of view.
Yeah. But I mean, that's a good perspective. But you know, as we navigate sort of this toxic relationship, divorce, it's one thing I noticed, and I'm just speaking from my own experience. Everybody knows I sort of shared my own personal journey. You know, it could be really isolating, right? It could be really isolating, just this whole process. And, you know, one of the things I think I went through is sort of rejecting help from anybody initially, right? You know, because you go through your own process. And then, you know, I think there's also a feeling sometimes when people are going through divorce or healing where they don't want to be judged, right? They don't want to be judged. So, you know, but the power of the village is really serious, and it's really important, and it's really vital to sort of mitigating through these different stages of grief. So I want to talk a little bit about the village, right? And we know that it's a little bit differently. What men may need, because to me it seemed like, I don't know, y'all need a village. I'm not sure. You can answer that in a second. And what women need is two different things. So we talk about the power of the village. I'm trying to understand, Aki, because all I see is y'all village look like it be other women, but that's just what it looked like. I don't know. So I'm waiting to hear an enlightened response about this.
So what our village should look like?
Yeah, not should. What does it look like, brother?
What does it look like?
Keep it real.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it does look mostly like women, but I'll tell you why that probably is too. Is because at the end of the day, it's connected to what I was saying before, where, at the end of the day, like, you're gonna go to the person who you feel like can understand you the best, right? So we haven't been taught the emotional realm, right? Okay. So why would we trust each other to teach us each other about emotion when that's not what we do? If I'm not gonna go to somebody who's gonna tell me to toughen up and shut up, you know what I'm saying? So if I need empathy, right? This is why we have to teach each other empathy, because we do need to learn how to have empathy for each other. We need to be able to cry in front of each other. We need to be able to trust each other that way. But because we don't, you want to talk about, you saying the reality of now, because we don't, we're going to go to the person. It's kind of like, I'm going to go to the person who can best speak to whatever's ailing me at the time, right? That's just real. So we have to, now I put the responsibility on us. We have to teach each other and reprogram each other to be emotionally honest. And we have a framework with the Sahaba. Because one of the things that I believe, when you read about the Sirah and the Sahaba and the companions, is they were extremely emotionally honest. They would cry in front of each other, as I said before. They would say when they were hurt, you know, like the story of Abu Dhar and Bilal. Like this brother, Abu Dhar, after he was sorry, he went kissed the feet of the dude because he didn't care. He wasn't worried about being cool.
Yeah.
He was worried about his soul, right? So he was taught, like honesty. And this is what I mean. Like, honesty is strength. Right. Honesty is strength, right? So we have to be taught that honesty is stronger than fronting and being insecure. But, if I'm going to choose somebody to help me heal, I'm going to choose somebody who knows a little bit about that realm. Women, and here's the thing. I actually kind of believe that we're supposed to be learning from each other anyway. So there's a level of this where, I learned a lot about emotional honesty from women. And you know what I'm saying? Some of the things I learned from women, and I see how I can help men. But I learned it from women. I speak to a lot of, I think you even spoke, but I speak to a lot of I get advice from women who are like 60, 70 years old sometimes. I just like to sit under them, right? Right. Listen to their stories and talk to me about what's going on here and that. I can't tell you the jewels they teach me. And these are things, emotions are genderless. We're different, we're created different, but emotions are that's energy. Like, some of it we use it differently, but I don't look at it from a gender perspective. It's just energy, right? So we need to be, so really you can learn from both. You can learn from both. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Khalil. But I get what you're saying, and it sounds very beautiful and peaceful. But y'all don't necessarily just go to the women to, y'all go to a whole new relationship. so don't make it seem like you're sitting at I'm just saying, like, gotta keep 100. Okay.
Are you talking about people who trying, or are you talking about people who are not trying? So
I'm talking about the trend with men, because we're beautifying it right now.
All right. So are we assuming good with these men, or are we assuming that they're not doing good? Because it's important for me to know. Like here's the thing.
Okay.
What kind of men are you talking about? Are you talking about men who are really trying to figure it out? Or are you trying to talk about, like, what do you like? Because it matters what the intentions are.
Well, I don't know. I'm just, listen, I'm an outside person looking in. So I'm trying to figure out why I see a trend oftentimes, or why other women, we speak about it. Where instead of when the man is obviously hurting from the divorce or the breakup, and he's married, 5 seconds later. So I know you're saying, like, getting the wisdom from the women and emotional, but.
Well, I mean, all right. I'm gonna keep it real. Like, okay, so here's what happens a lot. And again, I'm talking about people who are striving or trying, right? So if a guy ends up, in this way, it takes two to tango. Because remember, if he's going to a woman and he's confiding in that woman, and that woman is listening, and that woman is like, oh, you know what, I can do what he can't, she can't do, whatever the case may be, then really what's happening is both of them are connecting on this. Now, is it right? It depends on the situation. Are men going from one relationship to the other to kind of patch up? I think that's a simplistic way of looking at it. I think it's big. I think it's more than that. I could simply say they're trying to, every time a man goes to a woman after he's divorced or whatever the case may be, he jumps into a marriage. But is that simplistic? Sometimes it's not that. Sometimes he's really actually like hurting, and then he connects with somebody else. And I see women with that too. Like, I see women do that too.
But yeah,
you know what I mean? Like. So I think it depends on the situation. Yeah, there are some men. Put it like this. I'm
not casting judge. I just want to say this. I'm not saying it's right or wrong.
Yeah. So I'll put it like this. Like it really depends on the person, right? If you are still learning, how to have a good relationship with Allah, because Allah is the center of all this. So this is where it goes back to. If you're still learning how to have a good relationship with Allah, and you're still learning how to get out of an addiction to people, right? Then what happens is that you're going to look for a person to fill the void. So, or I would even say addiction to people. I just say your addictions that take you away from Allah. For some people, your addiction is people. Other people's addiction is alcohol. Some people's addiction is work. They don't go get in a relationship. They just work, right? What we're trying to do is we're trying to fill a void that can only be filled by God.
Absolutely.
Right?
100%.
So sometimes if we move too fast or we move without a lot of rationale, it probably has to do with the fact that we need to be working on our spiritual connection with God. Mm-hmm. The reason why it's not simplistic, though, is because healing is not mutually exclusive to a relationship. So if you happen to find somebody and you're on your healing journey, you can do both. But if you happen to find somebody and you're not on your healing journey, then you will use that person. That's when you'll use that person to fill the void. That's the unhealthy part. But if you find somebody and you're on your healing journey, you can work. You can find after the period of the time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained that you're supposed to be away. Because Allah in Quran actually, talks about the fact that even when you're in iddah, like there's no harm, for example, if you express, as long as you don't do a contract, right? So Allah knows. I trust Allah more than I trust myself. So Allah knows the period that we have to have. After that, it's really about our wisdom and what's going on with us. So I like to stick to, we should be in a constant state of healing, regardless of what we're doing, whether we're in a relationship or not. If you're on a healing journey, right, you might find somebody who can help you in that. But the moment you think this person's going to fix it, or your pain is going to be mitigated because of this person, or you're going to this person to patch up your pain, no, only Allah can do that.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so now
I won't let it. I can't allow it to just be about men just jumping from, because it ain't.
But that's okay. I appreciate it. But listen, so what type of village? Okay, so you said that typically men don't go to men. So, but what is needed for men to actually have a village that sort of help them through this ways where they can kind of be more productive?
We have to. I believe we have to start early, train early. We have to be mentoring early. We have to be mentoring the right way early. Start the boys as young, and then as men, we have to do some emotional training. Like there are people who mentor in this as well. I think it's good that men get some type of counseling, individual counseling. I think it's good that men get some type of individual counseling, regardless of what our relationship status is, regardless of what's going on. And if there's men to do it, it's good. The issue is that, to be honest, man, we don't have a lot of trust. And we don't have a lot of trust amongst each other. And a lot of it has to do with, within us in our ranks, just as, and this, I don't think it's much different from women in this way. It's that, there's a lot of hasad, there's a lot of jealousy, there's a lot of gossip. Men gossip people talk about women gossip, but men gossip just as much, man. I'm sorry.
Really? Y'all do? I figured.
I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. I've seen it. So we gotta work on our trust. And so I'm gonna keep going back to this theme. We have to start with our individual relationship with Allah. We have to learn how to pray on. We have to first learn how to cry to Allah. Mm-hmm. I had to learn how to complain to Allah first. Like literally, it's so funny. I grew up Muslim, but the concept of complaining to Allah for me early on, I felt ashamed about it.
Yeah.
Until I was reading the Quran, when Allah was like literally like, why don't you complain to me first? Right. And I'm like, really? I can complain to you? Like I can actually talk to you in the way that I need to talk to you. You know what I'm saying? But I didn't like, this wasn't taught to me it wasn't taught to me early, because what was taught to me was you just gotta be tough. That's what was taught to me. Right. Yeah. So the first part of it is that we have to learn how to rely on Allah and rely on Allah consistently. Right. And the way that I would do it with men is talk about discipline and responsibility and duty and honor, because that's what resonates with us. Okay. You know, like a lot of the psychologists, I'm going to say this, though, and talking about the village, a lot of what I see with the psychology and the experts and the things like that, they cater towards women when they appeal to their emotions. We don't respond to the same things that women respond to, right? So I know the reason why, though. Women make up a large percentage when it comes to who pays. Yeah. Women are going to pay for it.
Yeah,
so it makes sense to market to women. It makes sense to cater around women. But the problem is that we're not going to respond to the same stimuli because we're not built like that, right? Mm-hmm. So one of my missions is to, help and assist in creating spaces that are conducive more for how men respond to things and respond to emotions, how we can get it out of men first. And sometimes for us, we need a physical activity. Like I can tell you, and I'm sure men on here can probably relate to this. But some of my closest friends, you know what happened to me first with them? We fought. We were young boys, but we literally had fist fights. Right. And then we became friends. You know what I'm saying? It's we're just as emotional as y'all. It's just we process it differently. Yeah. We hold it in differently. So I'm interested in concepts that allow us to get those things out of us first before we deal, because most men aren't going to articulate and talk. We don't like to talk the way that y'all like to talk, typically. There are some who do, but most of us don't. So, there's a lot of work we have to do within ourselves. But, so that's where I'll stop it for that, because I don't want to, like I said, I know we got more to cover.
Hijack the whole show. Okay. Okay. So, all right, so we talked a little bit about the village for the man. I just wanted to get a female perspective. I think, mashallah, I think women are really intentional about their villages. I think we kind of cultivate, for the most part, our villages before, stuff hits the fan. I will just say that the village tends to shift, or sometimes it will shift with women, especially for a woman that may go through a divorce. There may be a shift in people that may support, or people that may show up, don't show up. And I just, for me personally, I feel like, what's most important is that the women are radical about expressing love and acceptance and understanding to the woman that's going through the pain. Judgment and harshness and why didn't it work, or blame or anything like that is just not going to be received well from the woman that is actually going through the breakup. But I actually think when it comes to the village for the woman, the only thing I think what's missing is that I think when women go through these things, especially when I think if the divorce goes pretty bad and the brother is responding in an angry way, she's often left unprotected. And, there's just like women coming around and offering her support, but the men they typically align with the brother. I'm just, from my own personal experience, the brothers typically align with the other brother unless, they have an intent or something that they maybe want from the sister. And I'm not saying all men, but that's just a personal experience. So I think that's one thing that's sort of missing from the village, is a way of sort of.
It's my personal experience too, but I want to ask you a question, because I want to ask you like what was going on with women, because especially being a person who was resident counselor of a shelter where it was women, it was domestic violence shelter, but as a man, I saw probably more women attack other women. You know what I'm saying? Especially from a single perspective and that type of thing. And for me, one of the things I learned when we're talking about the village also is that women are just as much key. You know what I'm saying? Just as much key. And one of the things that I feel like has to change is the social ostracism. What women will socially ostracize another woman if she does anything outside of specifically what she wants. Like, for example, like if a woman happens to be pro-polygyny, or a woman happens to be, so anything that, for example, it's okay with the sunnah, but they don't like. So, or a woman happens to be single, or a woman happens to be divorced, right? I find myself having to, and I'm just saying personal experience, I find myself having to be in a space where it's like, okay, this person was sent back by a woman in a nasty fashion, let's just be honest. And I'm like, okay, so, here's what we do. And see, the difference is that Allah say, I can't act the same way, because Allah says that I'm supposed to be Qawwam, right? In the Quran, Allah says that I'm supposed to be Qawwam, right? So if somebody comes to me and I have the ability to help, I believe it's my responsibility to help, even if it's just to push somebody to the right direction. I have a responsibility to Allah to help, and if I don't, I have to answer to Allah for that, right? And what's happened, one of the things that's happened, I think, is connected to actually what you're saying too, is that because we have left our post with that, sometimes I wonder if we have left you all with too much responsibility for the other person, because it's like, why and I almost wonder, when I look at sometimes the responses, I'm like, I wonder if that has to do with the fact that, one, we're not protecting y'all the way we should from each other, because like you said, we'll side with the guy, right? And is that creating a suppression that y'all have that is creating, we were talking about suppression of us, but what about the suppression that y'all have, where it's like now, with the way you're reacting, it's like you're reacting in a manner that, because maybe it's not what you should be doing fully, in the same way.
Yeah, right. And it's almost like, that femininity that's so sacred to us as women is like some of that, gets lost in the shuffle, because you really have to learn how to protect yourself from all the different things that may be coming at you. And it does really hurt if you have, like, maybe perhaps if you're going through a divorce and you had, healthy relationships with other couples and things like that. And then they, people begin to align sides. I mean, it's, like I said, when you divorce from just one person, the biggest thing for me is not just, you can kind of process that perhaps, especially if you saw it coming, there's been years leading up to it, but it's the trickle down effect of the loss all around that, like that union, Absolutely. Right? The friends and the family members and it's like, it can be really overwhelming to a point of where, that's why for me, it was like, I wanted to isolate, because I was literally trying to dodge like the hurt from it all. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I think that is something that's really, that's a really, really serious point. So we need to be really intentional about the village. But one thing I will say this is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is so merciful and kind, because He doesn't take anything away without replacing it with better. And so I've seen that, on one hand, we can sit and complain about, people that may have left or may have not aligned, or the problems with the village, but Allah does bring you exactly what you need. And so like He'll bring your village right around you, and the right people, the right women and right men to sort of kind of build you up and stuff. So, yeah. I mean, you just have to be really intentional about your prayer. But I know we got to engage our audience here. But I do want to just quickly, Khalil, I want to know some essential, because you dealt with the abuse aspect, narcissism. You were on that podcast.
Yeah.
What are some essential do's and don'ts for individuals who aim to help a woman or man that is navigating out of a narcissistic or abusive relationship? So just some quick do's and don'ts, and then we're going to get right to you, audience. So go ahead and drop any questions, any feedback, we'll get to you.
Okay, I think the first thing is to be in a position to listen and to create a safe space for that person. Listen before you judge, before you say anything, listen. And I mean, listen from a standpoint of understand that when you listen, and maybe you need to take, because there are literally classes out there on how to listen, right?
Yeah, can we stop there just for a second? Because I think that they're listening, active listening is something, a skill, correct? Okay.
Listening is a skill.
I want that to be emphasized. Go ahead.
A lot of times what you don't recognize when you think you're listening is you're actually just waiting to respond. When you hear someone in pain, the natural response is to try to get them out of pain, and it's guilt. It's kind of like, I'll give you an example of how this works really in a really instinctual way. You notice how when babies your baby cries, and if you really love that baby and it cries, for a while you feel bad, but after a while you get frustrated. It goes from feeling bad to being frustrated. Why are you frustrated? You're frustrated because you want that baby to actually like what you're doing, how you're nurturing it. And when you can't do that, you almost become frustrated. Like, why aren't you responding to it becomes about you more than a baby. Yeah. You know, when you start getting frustrated, literally people kill babies because they shake them. Like they call it shaken baby syndrome. Because what happens is you get so frustrated. And the reason that happens is because you didn't realize that when you were supposed to be patiently, methodically going through what's happening to help the baby, you made it about you, you know, and your guilt or whatever's going on inside of you that can't take the idea that the baby's not responding to the care that you think you're giving it.
Yeah.
So first you have to realize that it's not about you, right? It's not about you. And that's a skill. It's actually not something that everybody knows, right? Mm-hmm. So the best thing to do is to listen and get to know. If you're going to help somebody, get to know them before you make a critical opinion, especially give them a critical opinion. Because when people are in spaces of pain and hurt and they're self-destructive, the last thing they need to hear is a critical opinion. This is what made the Prophet Muhammad, I believe what made the Prophet Muhammad so amazing. And Allah even says it. Allah talks about how people wouldn't have come to Islam but for the mercy of the Prophet Muhammad. So that showing that mercy. So imagine, you already talking about your Muslim brothers and sisters. This is what we talk about. We talk about the village of Muslim brothers and sisters, right?
Right.
So when you're a listener, resist the urge to give that solution right away. Pay attention. You know, and when you feel yourself filling up, understand that it may just be what's happening is that you might not be the person for it because you got something inside of you that this is bringing out, right? And there's toxicity that maybe you're dealing with that maybe this is bringing out and it's bothering you because now it's bringing up emotions. So sometimes you just might have to be like, you know what? Man, for a minute I was here, but I think this is bothering me so much. So let me come back or recommend somebody. You don't have to be the answer to everything. So I can go on with this, but I'm gonna just start with that. Listen, Allah says that we are to be merciful to each other. And it's a reminder, when Allah talks, there's an ayah where Allah talks about how He will replace the believers who don't do what He asks. He will replace them with those who will. Mm-hmm. One of the things He says in this ayah is that, you know, that we clamor towards the approval of people who aren't like us, right? Yeah. And then another thing He says in this ayah is that we are to be more merciful to believers than others.
Yeah.
Too often, when it's the people that we know, it's actually familiarity breeds contempt. So if I think I know you or you're close to me, then I can treat you any old way I want.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing is to listen and to not respond and to create the safe space. And then you can go to the next. We can go on with this. Inshallah, we'll continue.
Yeah.
This is the thing where we're going to be working on building something with this eventually anyway. But I'm gonna stop there for now.
Yeah, and I'm gonna give some quick do's and don'ts for ways that you can actually support a divorcee. Those who aim to support someone going through a divorce. Khalil was talking about those navigating out of sort of those tough relationships, but this is just general divorce. And I had to write a whole list, but I'm gonna go through it fast because I want to get something off my chest, child. All right. So, okay, this is my main thing. Please don't reach out, like kind of offer this initial care, offer this sort of, initial, what's going on, all of that, and then go ghost. So many people, and subhanAllah, everybody, there's no blame, but it is difficult when you come to the person because you may want to know, you may be wondering, and you say, hey, what's going on? It's something, everything okay? And then they tell you, they share, okay, and then they never hear from you again. It makes the individual who's going through the experience, it makes it feel like you're just, you just want to know, right? You just want to know. So that's a big thing because that has happened to me so many times. I would say don't bash the ex-spouse, even if that individual needs to process that or needs to talk about it. I would say don't participate in that. Offer empathy, not sympathy, and just understand the difference between the two. I would say don't push reconciliation, counseling, all those things. Sometimes the immediate response of people, did you go to counseling? Do you want to, are you sure you don't want to reconcile? And it's like, just offer a listening space, because you really don't know the process of the person. And sometimes if the person's like in knee deep in the pain, that's not helpful. I would just say, try your best not to judge them. Try your best not to tell them what they should do. Do just talk to them, allow space. I would definitely say, if it's a woman in particular, I don't know what men need, but I would say visit them. Just help them with responsibilities. Typically, when women shift, this is something that's really important that I want to say. When a divorce happens with a woman in particular, a lot happens. Typically, sometimes this is different, but a lot of times she takes now sole responsibility of the kids. I'm not saying that the father isn't involved, but just as a different sphere. And then she has an extra, perhaps, burden financially. So then she tends to have to go into survival mode. And some of the things, or maybe even the way she upkept her house or the way she cooked dinner, some things may tend to fall as she adjusts. Mm-hmm. So if you offering that support, just coming by, hey girl, I'm coming by for a couple hours, I'm come by for an hour, help you do your dishes. Those type of things make a difference. If you don't know what to do. Yeah. And invite them out as well. And then I just say, last but not least, just offer them and show them radical love. So those are just some quick tips, do's or don'ts. Okay, so I'm gonna get to the comments, Khalil. So we're gonna now just kind of focus on you guys. Khalil, I don't know if you paid attention to, how I am with this comment. I don't know what you were paying attention to initially. I was somewhat, yeah. You got something that you want to pull out? If not, I'm just going to.
Well, there's one that caught my eye. Was one that was a woman who said she tries to teach the man to be emotionally, to teach her children to be emotionally intelligent, but she's not sure how. And I would actually say it's complex. I think I don't know, like in most places that I know, in most cities that I know, there are mentoring. There are places that mentor, and you have to be careful with those because, if you don't trust them, you want to be in the presence because, nowadays you just got to worry about things like pedophilia and all of that, so you got to be careful with even those spaces. But, a lot of times the way that the way that men tend to respond to emotional intelligence is different. So, the issue is that, it's kind of like you kind of have to let them kind of go through it. Men we kind of hit our head a lot, in order to get it. Like, if anything, we kind of need to hit our head. What happens with men is when you try to, when you try to control us too much, you know what I'm saying? We end up kind of rebelling and becoming more cold, in a lot of ways, when every little thing, a lot of times what happens with young boys, especially, and it's not really the woman's fault. I give so much credit to women who are single, who are raising young men, man. May Allah reward you and give you paradise without account for taking that sacrifice, because it's not easy, right? But if we're just talking about reaction, what happens to a lot of young boys is that, they get, they kind of got on so much, every little thing, and it creates this kind of space, where he kind of has to go into his ego to block it out, because men were actually created, we were created to respond to you all, the feminine voice. We were actually created to be sensitive to the feminine voice. But if we're constantly being criticized by the feminine voice, then what happens is we tend to grow a rebellion towards it. And it's not something that, and I know, and this is what I'm saying, it's not a blame thing. Like when you are a single mother, you got to tell that boy to get his behind in and do what you got to. Like you got to keep that boy. So it's not something I'm telling you, you can. I don't know how much you can change. The only thing I can say is we as men got to get more involved with the young men who aren't, who we don't, who we ain't directly fathers of, because they need that balance. Because the bottom line is that what is happening a lot is that I believe what's happening, I've talked to women about this too, is that there's this love-hate relationship that the boys have with their mother. They know their mother did everything for them and they wouldn't let nobody harm them, right? But why is it that a lot of boys end up like not liking black women and things like that? It's because at the same time, what's happening is that they also kind of filled up by feeling like they were so criticized and critiqued on every little thing. We don't do well with that. We don't do well with that. So we need that balance. We should be criticized and critiqued. We need some of it, right? And the only real solution I got is that we have to step up as men and be more mentors. Because I'm not going to tell a woman or a mother to not make sure that her child is disciplined and does what he needs to do, but she can only do it in the way she knows how.
Right.
So this is a situation where we just got to find. That's why it's important. If you can, I say, if the father is healthy, please let him get time with that man. If it's not healthy, that's a different situation. I'm not saying, because when we're talking about abusive men, they can actually cause the other opposite end of the problem. The abusive men can make young boys disrespect women. So if the man is abusive, then you have to really consider how you can protect him. You know what I'm saying? And then again, men have to join together. Men have to band together and help in making sure that the young boys are protected from abusive fathers who will teach them how to disrespect women, right? So it's not a simple solution, but the point is that we gotta have a paradigm shift when it comes to this. Comes to this.
Yeah. Okay. So one point I see is you have to be aware and selective with who's in your village. Everyone that reaches out does not need to know your feelings or your business. So that was just a point. It wasn't a question. But I guess but that is a good point as far as even being selective, because I think, you're pretty vulnerable, at least women, where a lot of times we're vulnerable when we're going through pain. So sometimes our maybe we may not be as in tune to like that intuition and those type of indicators we typically have because of our vulnerability or our pain. So a lot of times we are susceptible to being taken advantage of. And that's how sometimes a lot of women get taken advantage of men. They can sense out a woman who's vulnerable, right?
Absolutely.
And Absolutely. So do you have any insight of far as how to be selective of that village and who's in it?
I gotta post this article that Zakia did about. She said and her article is actually how I protected my soul from the village.
Wow.
So literally, she's talking about how like there's circumstances and situations where in order for her spirit and her Islam to survive, she had to block out most of the village because in the name of helping, they were hurting. And this is the issue. And I'm gonna tell you, I don't think there's any shortcut to this one right here. We have to get back to Tawheed. We have to get back to the fundamentals of Islam. We have to get back to praying 5 times a day. We have to get back to submitting our desires to what Allah has prescribed over what our opinions are. Because what's really happening is that everyone has an opinion. Everyone thinks they're right. Everyone has a desire and everyone thinks they're right. And because we're not in the practice, the spiritual practice that was prescribed by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we don't even know that we have the effect of being abusive. Because the solutions that we come across often are opposed. Like you can hear what someone will say, you know what I'm saying? And then not even realize that Allah has actually prescribed something different, right? Or prescribed a balance. I'll give you an example in her case. Like for example, I'll give you an example where, like someone who's being abused, for example, by their parents, right? But in some traditions, the parents are like God. Like if you say anything, if you don't do anything but obey your parents, doesn't matter if they're if they're harmful, if they're abusive, whatever, then it's on you. It's always on you.
Right.
But Allah, when you start reading the Quran, Allah tells you to actually, He actually tells you to bear your parents' patience. But if they prescribe to you something that's against what He says, then do not obey them. Do not obey them. Then he goes in another story in the Quran, Ibrahim. He gives us a story where Ibrahim literally has to, in order to preserve his faith, he has to go against his father. And then in other ayahs of Quran, Allah says that, that we are not, he challenges us. Do you follow the way of your ancestors or your fathers, even when your fathers are ignorant?
Yeah. So
what Allah does is He gives us balance. When we get away from understanding what Allah is asking us to do, then we forget what Allah has said. Allah has actually prescribed. So with a lot of what's happening, I can talk all day about the symptoms of what's happening and why the village is acting nasty and all of that. But the truth is that I will ask a more deeper rooted question. Are you connecting to your Quran every day? Are you making your 5 salats a day? Are you making dua every day, right? Are you reminding yourself of what Allah asked you to do? Because that will actually help you to frame your perspective, right? So when you help somebody, you won't transgress the boundaries. You won't tell somebody that they got to worship their husband in order to get to paradise. They got to pretty much leave. You won't tell them because, because there's more balance than that in the Quran. You won't just tell them that, no matter if their parents, is abusing them and using them and all that stuff, that they, even if they die, you know what I'm saying? At least they die respecting their parents, because you'll remember the story of Ibrahim. And, what's actually happened is, because we don't connect spiritually, we are replacing that connection with the media, because see, we are vessels,
right?
Vessels that need, so you're not going to not be affected. You're a product of your environment. So don't think that if you're not affecting yourself with what Allah told you to remind yourself with, that what's going to happen is you're going to leave an opening for the marketing to come in. You're going to leave an opening for the TV shows you watch. You're going to leave an opening for the pornography that we can't get out from being addicted to. You're going to be leaving an opening for all those things. And those are the things that are going to lead you. And then one day you're not even going to recognize your believing soul. So, and then how can you help somebody else when you're not loving yourself in that way?
Right.
So we got to get that part right first.
Absolutely.
That's the root.
100%. 100%. So I saw someone say, men get judged harshly for having too much emotion by men and women. If you're too in touch with your emotions, people start thinking you're weak. So I think you addressed that a little bit about that. And I guess some men have a difficult, like I was interested, Khalil, when a lot of brothers were sharing that, after they got divorced, how they were just slammed by other men, like, hey, I got this sister, how about this? When they were actually not even in that space, and that they felt like pressured, and the brothers were questioning them, like, you can't be out here without a wife. And, just, is there a lot of sort of pressure in that regard when men want to go against the grain a little bit? Like, what you're speaking of, what men need to do, is not typically, right? That's not the average.
Well, I think that now I'm going to go back to the same root, is that the problem is that we are framing, and even the question, even when you talk about how men get slammed and all that stuff, human beings, we're going to deal with imperfect human beings. And this is why it's so important to make sure that we're not pleasing human beings first, right? Because men can fall into people pleasing and human being pleasing just like women can. I can simply refer to high school. Most high school kids, especially men, now I'm talking about men, if you notice, men respond to the image thing. That's why jocks are so, sports jocks are really popular, because, and admired because of their strength and their discipline and that type of thing. And people want to be them, or they want to be like them from an image perspective. It's an image thing. Men are very, very sensitive to image, right? And that starts actually in school. We start paying attention to how people think of us and all that type of thing. I know men who are now like, who are handsome, who went in school, they couldn't get any girls. And they talk about how now the problem is that, listen, I couldn't get anybody when I was younger. So now that I can, I have an issue. I got an addiction, because every time a girl kind of says something to me, I kind of respond in a way I shouldn't, because I didn't get that when I was a kid. I wasn't looked at as the kid who was cool. I was looked at as corny. So now I'm not corny no more. Like it's on. It's on. And so that's why I say that, remember, it can't be about women, and it can't be about men. You actually have to strengthen your relationship with Allah. Like, you got to make your motivation like Allah is first. And it's so crazy, because what Allah says is so crazy, because once we do that and we get in the habit of that, you start reading where Allah's like, I'm going to give you everything you want. Just weather this storm in this earth, and you're going to get the things you want in a purified way in the next life, right? So he's not even like totally saying, hey, listen to me, and you got to reject that stuff forever. You're going to have the sisters that you want. You just got to wait. But right now, you got some discipline, bro. But if you don't even get to the point where you believe what Allah is saying about it, and then what happens is that now you're responding to people. So yeah, when you get slammed, when you get hurt, it's going to be double hard, and you're going to that's going to be the only thing that you got to go on. And again, that's why it's so important to have the relationship with Allah. But secondly, I will say
okay,
the village does matter. It is the responsibility of the village to be fair and merciful and compassionate with a person. But how it connects is, if you don't know the advice to give, you just kind of giving whatever you just kind of arbitrarily think. Mm-hmm. So it's very easy to fall in. So a man, honestly, I can see where a man is like, hey, this is his sister, because he's thinking about, oh, well, you know what? He might be projecting on himself. well, I don't want him to fall into zina, so let me figure out how I can get him out of it. It might be a good intention there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And the man, who's in that other space, he's not thinking of it, so it's not even a problem for him. So, it's not perfect. Like, that's the other thing. We're talking about pain management. We're not talking about perfection, too. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm gonna keep pushing the source, not just because I'm not trying to come in from the holier than thou thing. No, it saves me. It saved me. I've been through many of these situations that Ox are talking about, right? And really, it wasn't until I started really focusing on that individual relationship with Allah. Like, really, I'm talking about, like, even when you talk down to, hey, sometimes you just got to get with yourself. Prophet used to go to Cave of Hira. Sometimes you just got to get with yourself and just be by yourself for a minute.
Right.
Nobody shut out all the noise and get into Hajj and be okay with crying to God. Trust when I say, I'm not saying this from no place of I'm not pious. You know what I'm saying? I'm a person who's trying to learn from my mistakes.
Yeah. But no, that's the ultimate source. I mean, that's really all that that's really all that there is, because everything else is elusive and fleeting. Honestly, that's the only thing that's constant, is that connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, and like I said, a lot of times, my reflection is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take us through these trials and tribulations just to bring us back to him. So it's, ultimately, it is the source, and that is really the mercy.
And too many times, I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to just add this for 30 seconds. Too many times, I will ask, are you praying your 5? Now I'm struggling with that. I get 1 or 2 in, or maybe sometimes none in. So I'm like, I can't even have a conversation with you as a Muslim until that's happening. Like, because, you know what I'm saying? And so you'll be amazed at how many people aren't doing that. They're trying to figure it out, but we got to get that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's real. That's real. All right. So we're wrapping up to the end. One sister was just expressing that boys are so harsh to each other in school, clothing, games, haircuts, sports, from a teacher's perspective. So this is a teacher and a mother of boys, just what they have to basically endure, which sort of as a child. So she was speaking of that a bit. And I know you spoke of that already. I just want to acknowledge a few people. We're living in an unhealthy time, spiritually, mentally, psychologically, and emotionally. Facts. Okay. And one more point, sorry. So someone really appreciated the perspective that you gave of criticizing men less. That's one practical thing that they're going to take away from it. So you see anything else, Khalil, before that I've overlooked?
Yeah. I'm looking. I think everything you covered.
Thank you for most agreeing, subhanAllah.
Things. Yeah. No, I mean, it's just, Let's
give a takeaway then. I think I know what your takeaway is because you've been saying it throughout. But I would just say that, subhanAllah, like, I think one of the things about the Dope Muslim Women podcast, and one of the things that we did with the series, is not just to have like these juicy conversations, right? It's really to allow us to really kind of get back in tune with ourselves so that we can ultimately sincerely and authentically connect back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a very real way, so that we are able to navigate, the difficulties and challenges in this life, using the tools that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already gave us. He said he's going to test us with our sons and our wealth and all these things. Like I said, it's elusive and it's fleeting. The only thing constant is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as we delve with, when Khalil and I were talking about this podcast, and I was saying that the reason why these conversations are so important, why we kind of stay on these conversations of relationships, is because as a people, we're kind of stuck right there. Like, that's where we're stuck. Like, we can't get past this idea of building healthy families. So talking about, there's a lot of things going on in the world right now, and it's kind of even hard to, talk about, fighting systemic oppression, all those things, which we know that we're constantly in the struggle of. But it's like our families, we're not even kind of getting past that sort of cusp. It's really important that we continue to tackle these topics authentically, honestly, and lean on each other. It's really important. I had a couple of sisters that shared their perspectives in the inbox of what they're going through. And some of them said, listen, I'm holding on to my faith by like a thread.
Yeah.
And it's real. You know, this is really real. People are really going through some things. And so that's one of the reasons why we're here as a village. And I hope you guys see the Dope Muslim Woman podcast as a village. And so that's just my little final word. I don't know, Khalil, if you want to add a final point.
Yeah, I mean, just you know, to say that, you know, that it's a marathon and not a sprint, man. And Allah says we were born into toil and struggle. We were born to struggle in this life. So understand that we were born to problem manage, you know. We were born to manage the problem, not, you know, we're gonna die needing Allah's forgiveness. We're gonna die with Allah purifying. Allah says that He will purify us. He will take, you know, He will forgive us and purify us afterwards, right? Yeah. So remember, man, don't feel like when you mess up, you know, repent, do your best, and keep moving, right? And keep moving. And yes, it's supposed to be like this. It's supposed to be that we keep having these conversations. You know, Allah says in Surah Al-Asr that, you know, the ones who are lost, the only ones who aren't lost, the exceptions are those who join in the mutual teachings of truth and endurance. The mutual teachings of truth and endurance, which means we're having a conversation to talk about how we can be better. So remember, they'll never give up on that. And don't think that, you know, because you've heard it a million times and you're not doing it, or you tried a million times and you can't get it right, that it's over. Allah rewards the effort. And this is the difference between human beings and Allah. Is Allah's paying attention more to the effort and the process, and we're paying attention to the result. We're so worried about the rate of divorce and all that stuff. And I'm not saying that's horrible. Sometimes that's an indication of things, but it is not the end all be all. Allah is concerned with the process. So as long as you are in the game, as long as you are in the process, then you got a chance. And that's all we can ask for is a chance. That's all we can ask for is a chance. So that's what I'd say. Don't give up on the process. The results will come. And sometimes for some people, the results might not come until after this life. And that's okay too. But if you give up because you're worried about a rate or somebody's evidence or somebody's empirical evidence or somebody's statistics or somebody telling you how many times you did this, how many times you did that, how many baby mothers or baby fathers and all the stuff we have to say, because those are all results. Don't ever let nobody give up because of the result they gave. The result you should be paying attention to is the result that Allah is saying He promises you. And that is that if you die in the effort, of Islam, I'm sorry, man, I'm passionate about this.
That's okay.
If you die with the effort of being forgiven by Allah, you can have done so much wrong, and Allah will purify you. So don't let no human being ever take you from that, man. Don't ever let no human being take you from the mercy of Allah. That's what I would go with. That means that we might have to have 100,000 conversations, but the fact that you having a conversation and you want to be better, and then you going and praising to Allah. And the brother Simeon, I did want to mention what he said. He said, alone with Allah in the middle of the night is the best therapy. This is Allah, literally the first salah that was prescribed was the night prayer. Don't give up on your Lord, no matter what these people say. That's the takeaway. And you will be successful. But if you give up on your Lord, you will not. So let's continue these conversations. Yes, we want the best results. We do. But don't get frustrated when they're not there. This life is not for that. The absolute reality will happen in the next. Right now, just try to get there forgiven. That's the response. That's what I have for you.
Oh, thank you, Khalil. I appreciate that. I think we all appreciate that. I think we all felt that. And may Allah have mercy on all of us. May Allah forgive us and allow us to really be sincere people, really be sincere people on this journey. So I really wanted to just, subhanAllah, in this and express some sincere gratitude to our village, which is the Dope Muslim Woman Podcast Village, all of you guys, all the audience members.
Don't forget to push your site.
I'm not going to forget. Okay, let me express my gratitude first.
Okay, no problem.
Give me all my business. But I appreciate you guys, because this process, like I said, was so difficult, and I shared it in my live. I said I had planned on this topic before, and then, life happened and things happened, and then, I was just experiencing a lot of feelings and triggered a lot of ways. It was a very difficult 2 weeks for me. But I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Brother Khalil, I appreciate you so much. MashaAllah, you came on multiple times, and your insight, I don't just appreciate, of course, I appreciate it, but the whole family appreciates all your insight and your wisdom and your passion and how unapologetic you are with the truth. And so I just wanted to really express sincere gratitude to you, because this was a tough 2 weeks. And mashallah, you really helped with getting us through it. So may Allah reward you.
Mashallah, thank you.
Mashallah.
And may Allah reward you for putting this platform up and allowing people to heal. You know, I can see the results. I can see how people are responding, and it's working. So don't ever stop.
Alhamdulillah. I mean, and with that said, I don't even know. Look, can you type it in? What is it? Dope Muslim Woman. Okay, so I now have a website. It is dopemuslimwoman.com.
I'll type it in. Dopemuslimwoman.com.
So he's gonna put it in there. So dopemuslimwoman.com. Right now, I'm still developing it. It does have a place where you can show your support for the content and the efforts, and you can donate to Dope Muslim Woman Podcast. It is right there, safe, secure ways for you to donate. So if you want to show your support for the content, we are going to keep it coming. So you can go there, dopemuslimwomanpodcast.com. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khairan to everybody. I do want to say, though, that we have one more series coming up for the season, which is called The Journey. So it's going to be really beautiful. We are going to start next week with talking about the journey towards moving on and finding love again, that process and that journey. We're also going to talk about the journey of the wait, and we're going to be delving into actually tackling, waiting for exactly what you want and need and what aligns with you. And we're going to be talking about a couple of different topics, also the issue of the journey of courage and the journey of navigating. We have an episode called Black Boys Don't Cry, which is really speaking to a lot of what Khalil spoke of. And so there'll be a lot of great topics coming up. With The Journey is coming out starting next week. So look forward to that. Thank you so much. I am so humbled. I'm so grateful for all of you guys. May Allah reward you and uplift you. I love you guys deeply. May Allah reward all of you guys. Okay. So
and I would just say again, please support. Again, that's dopemuslimwoman.com. So y'all can support. You can even do a monthly thing. You can do a weekly thing. You can do a one-time. You can do, what's suggested, or you can do however you want. But this is how you allow this platform to keep going. So really appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay. All right, you guys. Inshallah, this has been another amazing episode. Thank you so much. Inshallah, we'll catch up with you guys. Inshallah, next week. All right. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.